This is Vince DeGeorge for DTMMB Media. This week we're going to be reviewing Stolen with Nic Cage.
Don't Tell Me My Business Media presents Vince, Chris, and John give you all the latest reviews, discussions, and news for film, television, music, books, and games, and more.
Once again, I'm Vince DeGeorge. I have with me Chris. Say hello, Chris.
Hello, Nic Cage fans.
And John. Say hello, John.
Hello.
So this week we kind of ran into a quandary with this movie. We've been talking about how we're going to review it. We were expecting to see something absolutely horrible, and it was not all that bad. So what we're going to do this week is kind of talk about our love of movies and the parts of movies that we like and what it was about this movie that didn't make it bad. What was the rating on Rotten Tomatoes, one of you guys?
I believe it was 14%.
Yeah.
Expected it to be really bad based on that rating.
Yeah, and it wasn't. I wouldn't say it was in the 80s or even the 70s, but maybe 60%. I mean, it wasn't a horrible movie. I've definitely seen much worse. It followed a nice little format, I thought. And that's something that we're going to get into during this review, is kind of talk about the cliches that they used to kind of make it what I thought it was a successful movie. John, did you have any kind of the same type of thoughts?
Yeah, I would say that this movie gave me the most boring kind of surprise I've ever had. In as much as, like you said, I went in thinking, okay, this is Nic Cage. This is Nic Cage at the later part of his career, when he's made some extremely questionable choices. This ought to be good. At some point, he's going to Nic Cage out, and he turns in a very steady, actor-like performance, and the movie really was not bad. I wouldn't describe it as good. It's nothing that I would rent or suggest to anybody or download even or anything like that. But it wasn't a terrible movie either, or even a bad movie, or even a slightly bad movie. It was just a movie.
Of course, the what a movie is judged by usually is the take in dollars. And Chris, I think you did a little bit of research on what it did in the opening weekend and what the budget was for this movie.
Yeah, the opening weekend box office, I think was like $180,000 domestic. Couple weeks in the theaters, it made about $300K. And depending on which source you look at, it made between $2 million and $13 million overall worldwide. I don't recall exactly what the budget was at the moment. Maybe
I know that one.
35
yeah,
million, something
35
like
million.
that. Yeah, which I'm guessing was mostly for mostly to pay the actors that were in it. Because there were some named actors in this movie. It wasn't
Right.
It wasn't just Nic Cage and a bunch of no names. Josh Lucas has been a fairly hot commodity. Was in this movie and actually played the villain, which was I think probably a little different take for him, which was interesting, I thought.
Yeah, he not only played a villain, I think we'll get into it a little bit, he actually played what I think is a supervillain in the movie.
Yeah,
He did.
John, also, you found out some interesting things about Danny Houston that was playing the lead FBI agent on this movie.
Yeah, he's been in some interesting stuff. He was in the John Adams series on HBO. I think he played Sam Adams, something like that. But something else, he's the son of director John Huston, who directed some of the greatest movies ever made. He directed The Maltese Falcon, African Queen, Treasure of the Sierra Madre. He had a fantastic father. He is the half-brother of Angelica Houston. So I mean, this movie was good. It was not good. Well, it was good to the point of where I wasn't hating it or hating the time that I was spending, but it was slow to the point of where I was looking up actor information during the movie.
Yeah, I actually, I thought he had a pretty good performance in the film as well, and I only recognized him from the Wolverine movie where he plays Stryker in that Wolverine Origins. I loved the Adams miniseries, and I don't remember him as being Sam Adams in that. I mean, he's very forgettable. I think Chris saw him with something else recently, and he's a very, I guess, forgettable actor. Wasn't it like Wrath of the Titans?
Yeah, he was in that one.
Yeah, he was in that
Poseidon.
movie. And actually had a pretty important role in that movie.
Yeah, he played Poseidon, right?
Yes.
Which is interesting because Josh Lucas played in Poseidon, which
Right.
I don't know, kind of a weird
Synchronicity.
True.
Yeah. The movie was directed by Simon West, who, interestingly enough, also did The Expendables 2, which we did last week. And the thing about him, I mean, the guy seems to know action movies. As we said during The Expendables, it wasn't a great movie, but it accomplished what it was supposed to. And if, as far as the action sets in that movie, they weren't bad. So, Simon West is certainly a competent director. And I don't think there wasn't any problems in this as far as direction goes. There was some, just general problems with the writing of the film, but it wasn't bad. And I think maybe to his credit, he might have been part of the reason that it did succeed.
Well, here's the thing. This is, and this is about to be as funny as a cry for help. But I think the people, it was budgeted for $35 million, like you said. And this is a Nic Cage film, and by the time this was made, Nic Cage was poison. Nobody was going to throw $35 million at Nic Cage. But I think the reason why they did was because, like you initially said, it was Nic Cage, and it was Simon West together, and together they made Con Air.
Right.
Which is a very fun movie.
Yeah, that was huge. That was a huge moneymaker. So I think it was probably a good theory on paper, was that, well, if we get these two together again, I think the gross, I'm looking at right now, the gross for that movie after the first, I think, like towards the end of 1997, was over $100 million.
Yeah. Which was big money at that time.
Huge money, right?
Yeah.
And so they figured, well, okay.
Let's put them back together and see if the magic happens.
Exactly.
Yeah, throw MC Gainey in there in the mix again to see,
right.
Stir the stew pot, see what happens.
Right.
The other piece of this, I thought, is the setting was New Orleans during Mardi Gras, and of course, after Katrina, New Orleans is probably looking for things like movies to be made there. So they probably had huge tax breaks. I mean, the budget on this movie probably could have been $50 million, but it was in New Orleans, and they probably had huge breaks to do some filming there.
Oh yeah,
and really, New Orleans was a character in this movie. I mean, the way this these scenes were shot, a lot of landmarks, because one big plot device is the fact that Josh Lucas is the antagonist is driving around in a cab the entire time. So you see him driving through different parts of town, and I thought it actually made it visually interesting to me, even when there wasn't necessarily an action scene. Just there are a lot of New Orleans. I mean, it's a picturesque town. It's a interesting architecture, and they made a point of kind of focusing on that, kind of making that a major feature of the film, I thought.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and, you mentioned, plot device. I'm going to go ahead and get into the plot and kind of explain what it is. The setup is that Nicolas Cage is one of the greatest thieves in the world, apparently. The FBI has been trailing him. Specifically, the Danny Houston character has been trailing Nic Cage doing these heists for a long time now. They finally have him cornered. There's a nice, and we'll get into specifics, there's an exchange with a car chase. Nic Cage ends up with about $10 million that is apparently missing once he is arrested. He goes to jail for 8 years, gets out of jail, Josh Lucas was his partner during the heist, and Josh Lucas now wants the 10 million, and he was also he also lost a leg during the robbery as well. Kidnaps Cage's daughter, drives her around in a cab, and then it's a mad dash of Cage trying to find his daughter and trying to get $10 million to the Josh Lucas character, with predictable things all throughout. That's kind of the basic overview, so you know where this is going.
Yeah. You know, things start off with basically establishing Cage as a master thief, and kind of showing. I don't know about you guys, but for me, whenever I see these master thief in FBI cat and mouse games, I immediately think of a movie like Heat, and you know, Nic Cage kind of filled the Robert De Niro character from Heat, and Danny Houston was, of course, the Al Pacino character. And you just get a feeling going into this, at least I did, that these two know each other very, very well. There's a lot of history there that they don't really get into, but I think they did a good job of kind of setting that tone where you knew that Danny Houston has been spending a lot of time, a lot of sweat, you know, and blood trying to track down, you know, his main, his main target, which is Nic Cage.
But it's a dense first couple of minutes in that, because what they're doing is they're doing a lot of stuff, which again, it's able, it's competent. They set up Nic Cage as the master thief, right? At the same time, he's singing classic rock. Okay,
right.
Which is kind
CCR, as a matter
right.
of fact.
So it's kind of establishing
which is really this actually makes me wonder, and I want to get your guys' opinion on this. Do you think this part was written for Nic Cage? Because the CCR scene, to me, is classic Nic Cage.
It's just like,
you know, he's always
just like when he's listening to his Beatles and The Rock,
right?
If you remember that,
or Elvis, you know,
right?
So I have to wonder. You think this movie was written with Nic Cage in mind? Do you think this was supposed to be a Nic Cage vehicle? Again, with the pairing of Simon West.
I think so. Especially, I mean, it may have, like, the original script may have been different, but I think that once Simon West came along and they said, well, Nic Cage is going to be in this, or like, I think they saw the script and they say, well, you know what, let's add this. So I mean, they caged it up. So if it wasn't written specifically for him, it was tailored for him.
Yeah, I have to wonder when Nic Cage comes to a movie, because you start to see patterns in Nic Cage movies that are very similar. You know, a lot of time he's the focus. You take something like Wicker Man. There was only one scene in Wicker Man that he was not the central character of that scene.
Right.
Only one scene in the entire movie. So you have to wonder if this is something that Nic Cage comes in and he's got a lot of control.
Right.
I mean, whether or not he's a box office draw still, he's obviously still the star of the movie. And you know, the thing about Nic Cage is you never know when that movie's going to hit. If you look at his career, I mean, throughout, he's got anything from Oscar performances to complete duds throughout his entire career.
Well,
so you know, you kind of have to give him that leeway in case, you know, this turns out to be a huge hit after all.
Right. Well, and then, like, the third thing that happens in the very beginning of this movie is they got the Master Thief, got the CCR, right? Third thing, daughter. He's talking on his phone to his daughter, establishing that he's a good father and that he has a good relationship with her, and there is an emotional tie that can be exploited later on in the movie. And so it kind of telegraphs itself. If you've seen a lot of action movies like we have, then you realize, you know, at the very beginning, you see, okay, this guy's going to be a supervillain. His daughter's going to get involved. She's going to be threatened because he's being a creep and he loves her very much. And so there's the, not quite the MacGuffin, but I mean, there's the thing at stake. There's the thing that he does really, really love. That's going to be threatened.
That's true, and you know, it actually, a point comes to mind comparing it to another Simon West movie that we talked about last week, The Expendables 2. You know, one of our, you know, I think I speak for all of us when I say one of our big complaints about that, where, you know, certain, you know, things were introduced but seemed to never pay off. You know, it never really. You'd think, oh, that's something that's going to be, whether it be like Terry Cruz's razor blade. or something, you think it's going to come back. Well, this movie was written by the numbers in the sense that everything came back. Every especially in that first scene, like you said, it's packed with a lot of stuff, and every little detail came back later in the movie in somewhat predictable ways, but yet successfully, I thought.
Right. I mean, we talked about the Josh Lucas supervillain character. I mean, you can tell, like, right off the bat, he's kind of annoyed with Cage at this point. He's sick of listening to CCR.
Doesn't like kids,
and you get the feeling he hates being second fiddle to the Cage character. Going into this, you already feel that little bit of tension between them. It's established that they've been friends for about 16 years, but you can tell that there is a rift between them already.
I'm gonna throw something out here. I mean, this is just just thinking about the plot. Was Josh Lucas, with his character, did he intend to double cross Nic Cage for all $10 million at some point? Because I'm just thinking about how the MC Gainey character Lloyd. There are 4 people in this crew, and three of them are in the van. Then Lloyd is taking care of business with the with security system. Well, Lloyd's run a little bit late. Nic Cage gets sketched out about the time, and Josh Lucas is vehement about not backing off on this job. And to be honest, when I was first watching it, I could tell he was going to be the bad guy, but I was thinking, hey, this guy is he's setting up Nic Cage, maybe like similarly to Mel Gibson in Payback or something. Like but things go wrong. Because as the plot develops, we see Nic Cage dupe the FBI, get into the alley with the money, and then things go wrong between him and Josh Lucas. But was there a plan between him and MC Gainey, the Lloyd character, to rip off Nic Cage all along?
I don't know. It seems like maybe it was going to come to that. I think there was this feeling that they knew that they were coming to the end, that the FBI was close. Obviously, with the subterfuge that they do in the robbery scene, where they seem to go in one building but end up in another, so it's obvious they're trying to confuse possibly an FBI tail. I think they know it's coming to the end, and I think it's also establishing kind of this vibe that Josh Lucas will do whatever it takes to get this money. Running behind doesn't matter. We got to get this money. He feels like it's the final stretch. And he's desperate to get this payoff, so he's already going down this path, it seems, and then what happens during the robbery sets him on the edge. Now, we've already established that we have Nic Cage, we have Josh Lucas, and the MC Gainey character. The other character that does come into this is the female character, who's played by the Swedish actress, and I don't have her name right off
Malin
the top of my
Akerman, I
head.
think it is.
Yeah, Malin Akerman. Plays Riley. The young, sexy accomplice that doesn't really seem to fit in with any of these guys.
No, she's just kind of a pretty face. I think is stuck in there. She's not even she's not a love interest or anything. It seems.
This is not. I mean, this is not to say that she doesn't act well or anything like that. She does.
No.
She does.
I mean, everybody's performance is just fine. And pretty much what you expect. The MC Gainey character is
sketchy.
Predictably slimy. Like he can play so well. I mean, he always looks like on the edge of homelessness. And he also treats the Akerman character. What was her name?
Riley's the name of the character. Let's stick with
Riley.
Yeah, we'll stick with her character name. It's easier to say.
Yeah, Riley. He kind of has a sexist kind of vibe with her, and you can tell she's just disgusted by him. So he does his thing. Nic Cage does his thing. Josh Lucas, turns in a performance as the supervillain that's very good, and the Riley character, she's pretty pedestrian, but she does just fine. I mean, there's no issues with her character at all.
I was just going to say that's a great way to describe actually the whole thing, pedestrian.
Yeah. I mean, it was completely like non-offensive, There wasn't anything in the movie that, and as Chris alluded to, everything kind of pays off. And there was even parts of this movie where I was like, oh, this doesn't make any sense. And they would actually just turn around and explain, oh, okay, this is why that happened.
Yeah.
And I know it doesn't make sense. So, it kind of closed everything up in a tight bow for us.
Well, one of the things I think that was maybe the head scratcher for the movie that for me was just the opening heist. There were some issues with space and time relationships where they went into. Nic Cage clearly knows that the FBI is watching him, so they do a little subterfuge where they appear to be drilling into through the wall into a jewelry exchange, but in fact somehow end up across town in a bank. Maybe across town, maybe a few blocks away. Kind of hard to tell. The FBI though had to drive to the bank, so they weren't. It was far enough away. There was probably a block or two away at least. That was a little strange, but I guess it was just a matter of, well, audience, Nic Cage is a really, really good thief and really good at tricking the somewhat incompetent FBI, which they're also kind of establishing that.
Right. So then, the FBI charge in and they go to the wrong place with this, bit of subterfuge that Chris mentioned. And as they're rushing in, the Josh Lucas and Nic Cage character are running out. They run out into an alley, and there's a guy out there picking up trash. And Josh Lucas freaks out that he's seen their face and wants to kill this guy. Which, I think what we're getting established here is that Josh Lucas is, not afraid to commit violence to any, to end means, and he's willing to kill this kind of innocent bystander just to get away. This is where Nic Cage fights him. He sees no reason to murder this guy, which I think makes sense.
I have to disagree. I mean, you've got to put that guy down. He saw your faces. You have got to put him down.
It's just another thing where they're setting up Nic Cage as he's the hero because he's the guy who won't kill somebody in order to protect himself while he's trying to get away from a bank heist.
Exactly.
Right. He doesn't use a gun the entire movie.
He's a non-violent criminal
Right.
who loves his daughter and colors Care Bear coloring books with her.
Right.
So by the time we're 5 minutes into the movie, we already know that this is a saintly type of criminal.
Right.
Yeah, he's not even like an anti-hero. No. He's just a flat-out good guy.
Right.
He's just a hero who likes to rob stuff.
Yeah, he does it for the game of it, I guess. For the thrill and for the challenge. He doesn't probably would just throw away. Well, he actually burns the money after he gets caught, and that's kind of a major plot point.
Right.
Because after this, during this scuffle with Josh Lucas to not kill this guy emptying trash in the alley. The Josh Lucas character gets, whose name is Vincent, which is an excellent name, by the way. He ends up getting shot in the leg, which is apparently enough to drive him over the edge. Well, what happens is he gets shot in the leg for whatever reason, can't be treated at a hospital, and he loses the leg, and this makes him real dark. Apparently,
right.
He went real dark. So at this point, Nic Cage drags him to the getaway van. They hear the police coming, but Nic Cage has also left the money sitting on the ground, kind of near where the trash guy was, and goes back for the money. The others take off in the van. MC Gainey doesn't wait around, and the police pull up. Nic Cage takes him out and starts a car chase. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I thought the car chase at this scene was pretty good.
It was.
Yeah.
Again, it's funny to describe a car chase as pedestrian.
I'd say most pedestrians should watch out at this point.
Yeah.
They end up in a parking garage. Cage does some fancy driving. We have a little bit of Tokyo Drift going up the garage. He doesn't quite go up sideways and like in the movie, but does some nice driving, and including some reverse driving up a garage, up the different levels. But in the end, ends up being cornered after driving out of the garage and hitting the spikes that are up there to keep you from leaving without paying.
And there's another I won't kill an innocent person thing in that, where he's screaming through the parking garage, and he almost hits a lady who's in a car pulling out or something like that. She does the, I guess, cliched, frightened, hands over the face scream, and he stops in time and goes around her gently without hitting her or nicking her or anything.
Right. He's kind of a Buddhist thief, I guess. I don't know. But he does get cornered, and you see him grab the money out of the bag, and you're not quite sure what happens at that point. And he comes down, and Danny Houston finally gets his man, and from there basically he goes to jail, and it cuts to 8 years later. He's out of jail.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. When he gets out of jail, and the people there to pick him up are the FBI, Danny Houston, and his his lieutenant. I'm not sure I remember what that character's name was, but he played by Mark Valley. He those two pick up Nic Cage because Houston, even though he finally caught Cage, has been obsessing for 8 years about the $10 million that Cage never turned over. Really, the only clue we have about what may have happened with that is we did see a burning trash can near the spot where Cage left the car before he surrendered to the FBI. But we did not actually see.
My assumption was that he hid the. My assumption was that he hid the money at that point myself. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought he hid it inside the burning trash can.
See, and
which he did do, and I don't know if it turned out like he thought it would.
Yeah, well, he thought that plastic covering on the plastic shrink wrap on those $5 million stacks was fire retardant, apparently.
Now, if you were the FBI and you were obsessed with this, and is the first thing you would do is let Nic Cage know that this is kind of what you're looking for?
Well,
I mean, or wouldn't it be better just to kind of leave him alone? And maybe that would be the first place he went.
See, here's the beginning.
Maybe after seeing his daughter.
Here's the beginning of the demonstration of the world's most incompetent FBI office.
Yeah.
Because it's Mardi Gras in this movie, right?
Well, it's supposed to be
right.
Mardi Gras.
I'm just saying within the
I've
fictional
been to New
world.
Orleans during Mardi Gras, and the crowd was a little thin.
Right, and as you had pointed out, no tits. But
yeah.
But in the movie world, it's Mardi Gras. Apparently the FBI office in New Orleans on Mardi Gras has absolutely nothing better to do than to shadow Will Montgomery, and this takes the entire office.
Will Montgomery is
right. That's
Nic
Nic
Cage,
Cage's
by the way.
character.
Or if you know him really well, he's Gum.
Right.
That's his nickname. But anyway.
But that's all the FBI has to do in New Orleans during Mardi Gras is you tail this one guy. That's it. And it takes the section chief to do this, his assistant. It takes everybody to follow this guy around. Nothing else is happening.
No, not for this group, at least. I mean, it's pretty well established. I'd say there's at least 20 people in this posse.
Yeah. Well, the Mardi Gras crowd
FBI.
was a little light though, so maybe they figured they didn't really need to worry about it too much.
True.
I mean, it is a post Katrina world out there, guys.
Yeah, that's definitely true. So the first place Nic Cage does go is to see his daughter, who is a very pixie-like girl.
She's a teen actress.
Yeah.
She's.
I looked her up. I don't think she was in anything else very notable. I mean, I didn't recognize her. I don't remember seeing anything stand out that she had been in previously.
She was in a couple of
episodes. Again, her role was fine. I mean, 90% of her role was kind of laying in a trunk. So, can't screw a lot of that up. But I mean, for what she did was fine.
She was in As the World Turns.
Oh yeah.
Of course you remember her now. The
Right.
character of Hayden.
She is a
That was drama.
she is an excellent finger actress though in this movie. Her fingers,
Yeah.
just two fingers. They get a lot of film time when she's in the trunk, but
Yeah.
get a little bit.
Well, those could have been professional stunt
That's true.
fingers.
It might not
I mean, we do not know.
Yeah,
Those were her
it depends on
fingers.
how much they could insure people on this movie.
Yeah. So Nic Cage has his little talk with her. He's got a little speech that he tries to do, and it's a little nice moment where he pulls out a paper that has childlike handwriting on it. Maybe going into his background, he didn't have a lot of education, and maybe that's why he got into thievery, because it was really childlike writing. Of course, he was writing in prison, so I don't know if they have regular pen and paper
Right.
in there. Who knows? It might have been he had to fashion a pen out of a toothbrush or
Right.
something.
He had to take a shiv and dip some ink into it.
Yeah. So, it turns out that she kind of rejects him and has to go to her therapy session because of him. And this regular therapy session sets up the fact that Josh Lucas kind of has tailed her schedule. And I kind of missed this. Chris, you kind of picked up on this because I was like, oh man, looking back, I was like, this entire film hinges on this one moment. But yeah, that's another case of this movie setting up an explanation ahead of time of, how this all went down. It wasn't this huge mystery. It wasn't this huge, how did this guy set this up over, the past couple of years to make sure that everything happened just right? Well, the movie actually explains it. So I thought that was, after you kind of pointed out what happened, Chris, I thought that was a pretty nice touch.
Yeah, well, and I think it also shows. He was basically Nic Cage to the Josh Lucas Vincent character was sort of a mentor. You kind of got a feel for that relationship early, and it was established in the opening scenes with the FBI. They had a lot of photos of Nic Cage casing out the jewelry exchange that they thought was going to be the target. So they kind of established that Nic Cage is a methodical thief that's going to do a lot of research and case out his all the his targets well in advance. And I think that kind of just played into it with the Josh Lucas portrayal of Vincent, the way he he had to be there on that street corner with his cab in order to pick up the girl, to kidnap her at that point, in order to force Nic Cage to do what he wanted him to do, which we will get to.
Right. And I should point out at this point, we don't really know that was what was going on when she was picked up by the cab. We don't actually know this because she just gets in the cab and takes off, and Nic Cage's next stop is to see the Riley character in this bar that I guess I don't know if she owns it or she's just bartending, but it's a bar that cops hang out in, and he thinks that's a nice touch.
But I gotta say, I knew when the daughter got into the cab, I knew that she was kidnapped because it just the film didn't really telegraph it, but it was just a situation of, okay, if this movie is playing by the numbers, which it seems to be, this is the perfect time for a kidnap. And it turns out it was the perfect time for a kidnap.
Well, I knew it because I read the synopsis, and I knew she did get kidnapped, so I figured, yeah, this was the point. So when he's in this, he does get a delivery from her, from his daughter, when he first sees her, and he has this package when he visits the Riley character, and the package starts ringing. Now he shakes it. I mean, it's obviously a phone. But he shakes the package for some unknown reason, like it's a Christmas package, opens it up, and it's the Vincent character. Now, the other thing we should explain is that at this point, he has also been told that this Vincent character, Josh Lucas, has been killed.
Right.
And he was dead, and had that moment in the beginning when the FBI picked him up. The Danny Houston said, Vincent's dead, and Nicolas Cage was, obviously upset about it. They had been friends for 16 years, and just that he had been hanging with the wrong crowd. Well, he answers his phone, and it's Vincent. And at first, Nic Cage is elated that his friend is still alive, but learns quickly that he shouldn't be so happy because his this supposed friend has kidnapped his daughter and now wants the $10 million. Which I don't think is quite fair, because that's not his share.
No.
I mean, there was 4 people.
Right. But again, it's again, by the numbers. It's setting him up as, here's the kidnap call, which, happens exactly when it should be happening. And kidnap call happens, and it's all threatening all of a sudden, and I want this amount of money. And, again, it's, I guess that's the problem with the movie. I don't know, I guess maybe why it could possibly be a bad movie. It's a bad movie in as much as there's no surprises, there's no hooks, there's really no suspense in it.
Yeah, they sort of try to make a mystery out of what did Nic Cage do to the money, but he immediately says he burned it. And as I mentioned earlier, there was a burning trash can right there. So, was there going to be a twist there? Because there wasn't. He did actually burn the money, apparently.
Right.
I still wasn't convinced at that point.
Yeah.
It's really not until you know that his daughter's in real danger if he doesn't have this money that you kind of get the idea. He even goes to, first of all, Nic Cage says, my lawyer is in Tuscaloosa, and he has the money. So I have to go there, so give me 24 hours. And there's a little leap in logic here, because Nic Cage gets this idea to put the cell phone that the Vincent character is saying is being tracked. So he wants to put this phone on the train in Tuscaloosa, so he goes and he buys another phone and switches the SIM cards. So in 8 years, apparently, what he must have taken is one of those classes that they offer in prison. And this class offered a kind of a technology angle where he could learn all about GPS.
But even with the I need 24 hours to go to Tuscaloosa. You have 12. That's not even a surprise, because the poster for the movie says 12 hours, 10 million, one kidnapped daughter stolen. So it basically tells you exactly what the whole plot's going to be. There's no surprise at all whatsoever.
One thing I think is kind of interesting is I noticed I was looking up some factoids on this movie while I was watching it, and it was originally called Medallion, not Stolen. I'm not sure the story why they changed it.
Right.
I kind of like the name Medallion because it seems really kind of incongruous with the type of story it is until you notice that the cab, and we've kind of gotten to the part where the Vincent picks up the daughter in the cab, and pretty much the plan is that he will drive around the cab with the daughter until he gets his money, or until he kills her, whichever comes first. But the name of the cab company is the Medallion Taxi Cab Company. And plus the whole,
right.
The drivers have medallions, and cab drivers have medallions, badges, and so I thought that was kind of a neat name for the movie, to be honest. But they went with Stolen instead.
It's too bad that it was in New Orleans and not DC, and it could have been DC Cab.
Oh, that's so much more fun a movie.
Well, yeah.
Actually, is this just a sequel to DC Cab?
It could be. It's definitely it's lit. I think they probably didn't want to go with Medallion because it's too much like a medallion is too much like treasure, and then there's National Treasure, and someone might have thought that this was a sequel to those two movies, which is probably too bad. It probably would have done better in the theaters if that was the thought.
Yeah.
But there's also probably they were worried that there'd be like slow people in the audience going, I watched this entire movie, I didn't see a single medallion.
Yeah. Yeah, well, they would have to have featured the cabs a lot more.
Right.
The cabs were, they were pretty well featured, but yeah.
Well, I mean, just the names.
Well,
yeah.
You mean it's a medallion cab? A medallion cab. I mean, it would have just had.
Well, the funny thing is when the cab first pulls up, and you don't know yet that Josh Lucas is in it, but you can kind of tell that something sinister might be occurring because why the director choose to show us this cab at this point in the movie, but they actually kind of focus in on the trunk of the cab, and it says Medallion. And I thought, and the funny thing is when I was watching it, I thought, oh, Medallion Cab Company. I guess he wants us to know what this cab is, so when we see it again, it means something to us. And actually, that was, pretty much what the director was doing. And therefore, when I looked up and saw that the movie title was originally Medallion, it clicked immediately with me on what they were talking about, because I had noted that.
See, I thought maybe Medallion Cab Company was like a well-known cab company in New Orleans,
it might be.
And that was just like a connection.
Be. I really don't know. It might be.
I don't know. So go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I have a question.
I have a lot of questions about this movie.
I can't recall this. Was there a scene in the movie where there was like an exploding car?
Well, there was some crashing cars.
There's a burning car.
I don't remember an
end.
exploding car. There was there was a burning car.
All right, I'm wondering because I'd looked up, the 12 hours, 10 million. The poster has a car upside down about to explode, on fire, with Nic Cage running away from it, and I don't actually remember any scene where this happens.
The closest thing was the car. There's a point. We're jumping ahead in the plot a little bit, but there's a point where Nic Cage crashes a car, and it ends up upside down, but it's not on fire, to my knowledge, to my memory. Right. And then there's a burning car at the end. Spoiler alert. But that's true.
Well, I think it's another one of those things that's shows that there was some thought put into this movie. I mean, if you're going to make, you don't necessarily need to reference the movie to make a good cover. So, it's just one of those things. You show an exploding car on a cover that Nic Cage is running away from. I mean, it's fairly generic for almost any Nic Cage movie to
that's
be
pretty
doing
much what I was
something like
thinking.
that.
I was just wondering if they maybe had this picture in storage for a couple of years, thinking, well, at some point there's going to be a movie where there's fire and there's a car and there's Nic Cage, so let's just hold on to this and we'll just stamp whatever the name of the movie is.
They actually had some stills.
Well, there's probably a lot of Nic Cage.
Yeah, they had some stills from Gone in 60 Seconds, maybe.
Yeah.
Or maybe Drive Angry.
I mean, there's probably just Nic Cage covers out there. He's running from a burning car. He's running from an exploding building. He's running from a giant snake. Just a variety.
I have a feeling.
waiting to be.
I have a feeling that most actors and actresses take headshots to auditions. I think Nic Cage has a bunch of movie posters he has made up with burning cars and Mount Rushmore and things like that. And he just brings those in and said, "Hey, this sounds like this movie poster might fit your movie. I'm already in it. Take a look."
I'm thinking car. I'm thinking cab. I'm thinking explosion and possibly kidnapping. I think we go with that. He probably he could have pitched this movie himself.
Hey Simon, you know me.
Yeah. Let's make some magic, Simon.
Well, and again, we go back to the idea that this movie was custom made for him, which I would not be surprised.
No, I think it's a decent vehicle, for him overall. I mean, I think we all kind of mostly have positive, positive reactions to how Cage, his performance in this movie.
Yeah, I really did want to hate this movie, but the best I could do was nitpick.
Yeah, I really also think that we did check on the number of theaters this was released to, and it was a really small number. It was like about 184?
Yeah,
it wasn't a lot.
Like 140. It was less than 200 theaters though.
So it didn't have a wide release. So it almost has a straight to video feel to it, which I feel is probably the sweet spot for this. We saw it on Netflix, and that's probably where it belongs. Especially with an exploding car on the cover. You're thumbing through things. You see Nic Cage. You see some explosions. You're like, sure, why not? I'll click on this. How bad could it be? And it wasn't that bad. So, it probably was never. It either wasn't meant to be in the theaters, and that's why it had a limited release, or once it was screened, they said, we're not going to do a wide release. We'll just put it out, and then we'll get it on DVD or Blu-ray and Netflix, and hopefully make some money off of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably what happened. Was it may have just tested bad, and there was nothing they could do to edit it or fix it, and so they're like, okay, we'll just dump it. But
when it comes to those type of screenings, I think even if you're like us and you see the movie and you're like, it wasn't so bad. I don't think that's what they're looking for when you have a screening. Is people like, it wasn't bad. I think they're looking for, oh yeah, this is something I would pay to see.
Pay a decent amount of money to see too in today's theaters. I have to wonder of the 100 and plus theaters it was in, how many of those were in New Orleans and around that area? You know what I mean? Like maybe it was just released around there. Hey, I was in that scene. I'm gonna go check that movie out. I was an extra in the Fat Tuesday festival.
Right, exactly.
But
So the next point in the movie, he actually goes to the FBI and tries to get their help to track down his daughter. I mean, he feels like they're a pretty good avenue to take. I mean, they are the FBI. Things like missing persons and kidnappings, that's kind of their thing too.
Right.
Not just tracking down a single bank robber who has already been to jail and served his time. So, but they're like, this is just to get us off the trail. You got that $10 million. Nobody believes that he burned the $10 million. Not Vincent, not the FBI.
And I don't understand why Danny Houston cares so much about the $10 million. I mean, they can't. I mean, are they in a position where they can retry this guy and send him back to jail? I mean, the whole point of burning the $10 million was to get a shorter sentence. But he did get sentenced. He did serve his sentence out.
Right.
And I mean, he did not rat on his crewmates. So I mean, I don't know if perhaps Danny Houston's motivation is to somehow track the rest of the crew to the money, because he knows who those people are. He knows every one of them, but they he didn't. Those guys did not serve any time for the crime. So I'm not sure if that's the motivation.
Right.
But it seems very much like a personal vendetta against Nic Cage.
There are we say this movie is by the numbers, but there are different ways they could have taken to make it more interesting, and I almost think that one of the angles that might have been interesting is if they made the FBI guys kind of a little crooked, that they're kind of after the money too, not to put them away for more time, especially when they established during the movie that the Danny Houston character doesn't dislike the Nic Cage character. He doesn't miss, he actually has a moniker of respect for him and actually likes him in some instances.
Yeah, he admits to.
And the other thing, it does allude to a more backstory, because if you remember, when he gets out of jail and he's in the car, Nic Cage is like, so how's the wife? And we find out that the Danny Houston and his wife has been separated, but, there's obviously some personal connection there too. Because they have this conversation about his wife.
Yeah. I was hoping that Malin Akerman was allied with the supervillain.
Could have taken that example. Yeah, could have taken that too. I mean, she really didn't. She wasn't a necessary part. They're just like, okay, we gotta throw a female in here, a female character. Right.
Especially since she was so nice throughout most of the movie. It would have been a really, really good twist if, in the end, she was maybe even the mastermind, that she was the one who was kind of manipulating Vincent into doing all this.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, in that aspect, it was maybe a little bit too by the numbers, It's like, okay, let's not throw a twist at anybody, and throw them for a loop. Let's just kind of stick to a normal plan and a normal movie and no twist. We have this villain set up. Let's keep him the villain. And by the way, when they do cut to the Vincent character that we find out is alive, in the very beginning, he's somewhat clean cut. He's got a short haircut. Seems like a pretty decent looking guy. And they cut to him, and he's beat to hell. His hair is long and bleached. Of course, he's missing a leg. He's missing fingers, because that's how he fools the FBI into thinking that he's dead, as he chops off his own fingers and puts them next to a burnt body. So I guess, again, the most inept FBI office in the world falls for this. But he is just, he's just beat to shit. And it's kind of effective because he's a crazy character. I felt that he was, to himself, he's like, oh, man, Heath Ledger, eat your heart out, even though you're dead. That, I'm going to be the new Joker. After this film, people are going to be talking about me for Oscar,
Well, I mean, it's exactly what you called him. He is exactly what you called him, Vince. He is a super villain. He's got the disfigured look.
Mm-hmm.
He's got the master plan, which has everybody dancing around him, and he rants.
Yeah.
He goes on these rants around people, like when he picks up the Aussie kid.
Yeah.
He starts, doing this rant about, I think, New Orleans.
Yeah.
So he's got all of the criteria. He also has a spooky lair.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, a spooky but well designed lair.
And large.
Yeah, quite large. Well, is his lair because at the end it does go to an amusement park. I know I'm cutting ahead.
Right.
But is his lair in this amusement park?
And if so, that makes him like a super villain.
Right. He's like a Scooby-Doo villain at this point.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I wrote in my notes when I was looking at this was, at last an abandoned amusement park, Scooby-Doo.
Vincent was Old Man Wilson all this time?
And I wouldn't have
pulled the
gotten
wig
away
off.
with it too if it weren't for you meddling Nic Cage.
Nic Cage.
Bumbling FBI agents. So, God, where
But
are
I mean,
we?
he was a super villain through and through.
We're getting pretty far into this podcast, and I mean we're pretty deep in. So hopefully we can.
Well, the main
we can
the
fast
main,
forward to the rest.
thing I think coming up in the plot where we are is the FBI does not believe Nic Cage, but Nic Cage kicks the ass of a couple FBI agents that are escorting him out of the building. Manages to take their security badges, knock them out, handcuff them to the rail inside the elevator.
Yeah, an ex-con can absolutely kick the ass out of two trained
you work
FBI
out a lot in
agents.
prison. I mean, he was probably, you saw what he did in Con Air. I mean, he put on muscle mass when he was in prison in Con Air. That's true. I have to assume he's doing the same kind of thing in this stint. And but he had good. I mean, he had fighting skills. He definitely had some skills. He didn't use them a lot in the movie, but he did have good skills.
Does a lot of neck punching.
The neck
He's
punch.
got that little neck punch thing.
The throat punch is his go-to.
Yeah, I guess it's technically a throat punch more than I guess the neck is more to the side or the throat.
It's right under the chin. I mean, he gets up in there.
Yeah.
And and the Mark Valley character takes one right in the throat, and he's down. I mean, he's down immediately. But then they make a point of showing their bruised sides of their faces later, so you have to assume that while they were, somewhat incapacitated, Nic Cage hit him in the face again just to make sure they were out cold.
So Nic Cage hacks into the computer, the FBI computer, with the stolen badge. Another class that he must have taken. A lot of good classes in prison, I guess. Really top notch. And he hacks into their computer system. It's not really a hack since he has the badge, but he gets in there. He obviously knows there's just like a Google search engine that's built into the FBI computer because he finds the MC Gainey character where he lives, and he goes to pay him a visit next. Even though here's the thing again, the inept FBI. This guy's getting out of prison. This guy is a partner of his. Why don't they have this place staked out the whole time while Cage is out?
Inept. Everybody in the FBI has to follow each other around.
Right. It's like they're very reactive in this movie.
Well,
there's no proactiveness for the FBI at all.
Though, that FBI office has a huge force of FBI agents and SWAT-like police that they can call on at any time, at the drop of a hat.
Right. Yeah.
During Mardi Gras.
Yes.
So they're really not so much an office as they are. It's an FBI swarm.
It's a hive of FBI. But Danny Houston, anytime there's a lead or anywhere they need to be, it seems like there's an army of on the way with some heavy-duty automatic weapons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, fully automatic weapons.
Again,
just firing
something
away.
else I think Simon West must have taken from the Expendables 2 set. You know, some of the weaponry.
Well, I mean, the other can we talk about Danny Houston's hat for a second?
Oh my, I'd love to.
The pork pie.
So after the first scene, every scene beyond Cage getting out of prison, sometime while Cage was in prison, Danny Houston decided, you know what, I'm going to change my look up.
It's a bold choice.
I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna find the perfect pork pie hat that I can wear from now on. It's gonna be my trademark. In fact, I want people calling me pork pie, possibly, or maybe
Why
Hattie, or
Yogi?
funny hat man. I don't know.
It
Yogi
looked
Bear.
like
But he definitely wants it to be
it
a
looked
trademark.
like something he grabbed from a Bruno Mars video set or something. It was kind of bizarre.
Or possibly
was
the
just-
live action Yogi Bear
that's
set.
Good point. There's a pretty good theory out there this might have been a sequel to the Yogi Bear, or maybe a little reboot of the Yogi Bear franchise.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Took a little different spin when Nic Cage got
Yeah.
on board.
Hey, time to get the criminal.
But yeah.
Gee, Yogi.
Hey, boo boo. It's a picnic basket.
Chris? Didn't you say you saw a picnic
Yeah.
basket?
I'm pretty sure they mentioned the picnic basket at some point.
It's the only FBI office that has to hide from the Rangers.
So he goes to MC Gainey's place. He gets his gun. He gets him to admit that he was working with Vincent. They have a little scuffle. The FBI is right outside the door, but they're like, nah, let's let them fight it out, and we'll go in afterwards. Even though there's shotguns being shot and guns.
See, that's a theme throughout the movie, is that Danny Houston's in
Yeah.
charge of this, always in charge of this force, and he pretty much always wants to wait. Let's give him a few more minutes, and I'm not exactly sure what he's waiting for in some of these scenes. In the opening scene, he thinks he has him dead to rights, and he waits. In this scene, again, he's standing outside the door. He knows that Nic Cage is in there. Let's wait. As if he just wants both of these guys to kill each other and not have to worry about it anymore, I guess, maybe. But that's
Right.
and then and there's scenes later in the movie where the same thing happens. It's kind of a theme for Danny Houston, is to be the
Right.
very, very overly cautious FBI agent, even though he's kind of like Captain Ahab chasing after the white whale. He's a very, he doesn't go quite as crazy as Ahab. He keeps it pretty chill, and is always looking to take a couple minutes to rest before you go after the guy.
Sometimes I'm wondering if he's trying to let him get away. I mean, because he
likes the chase.
does.
He likes
tricks
the
him.
chase.
Yeah, he likes the chase. And again, it's established that he has respect for Will Montgomery, and and especially at the end. There's two moments at the end where it's like, okay, for one is like all is forgiven, and the next is he's trying to cheer him on into doing the right thing so he doesn't have to arrest him. So it's almost like he's trying to let him get away, and his lieutenant, doesn't quite do enough of like, are you kidding me? We're gonna wait again. Now you know what he did last time. It could have taken one voice of reason.
Well, it just seems to have this. He just seems to have this idea that we can arrest him, but only under a very specific set of circumstances.
Yeah, there's a finite window which we can arrest him, because I want to get him the maximum time.
He wants to
Is
catch
what it
him.
seems
Right.
like, but yet the next second he's
He wants
trying
to
to let
catch
him
him
get
so
away.
red-handed, it looks like the boy who touched the stove to see if it was hot. Remember that? He has a...
Mm-hmm.
He
Oh,
uses
that's
that
right.
little
Yeah.
folky saying. I think that's actually a little later, but...
I think
his
that's,
lieutenant,
I think that's a justification on his
finishes
part.
his that was that like the part that I thought was kind of like weird dubbing.
Yeah.
Because he was just like moving his lips.
he'd heard,
he
Right.
wasn't actually saying the phrase with him.
Bad
extra
ADR.
establishing that Danny Houston's used to telling everybody to wait until we get this guy just right,
Right.
Obviously, he's used that story a few times.
Mm-hmm.
But we're at the point, I think, they end up, obviously, the MC Gainey character doesn't make it out of that scene. And,
Yep.
and of course, he was in cahoots with Vincent. So Vincent knows, you have to assume that Vincent knows that Nic Cage is not on his way to Tuscaloosa like his cell phone is.
Right.
And it isn't. I think this is where he ends up in FBI custody. Correct? And
Oh, it's after he gets chased and he ends up, because I think it's during the chase scene outside when he's running on top of other people's cabs and cars, and he thinks he sees the cab that his daughter's in,
Right.
and it turns out to be the fake out where the number has been pasted over and there's a GPS in the guy's trunk. And when Nic Cage discovers that this is not the cab he was looking for, the FBI pounce and get him.
Well, let's just also explain that in between kind of scenes here, there's a couple of moments where his daughter almost gets away or almost makes a phone call on a BlackBerry inside the cab that a guy
Again, by
left.
the numbers.
He didn't really leave it behind. He was
She
pulled
gets
out
her-
of the cab. But there's a couple of those moments in there. There's also a moment where Nic Cage commandeers a cab, and that's how he gets the whole GPS thing going of tracking down this other cab. That's just a red herring to kind of throw him off the trail because it's got the other cab's GPS and cab number.
that shows.
And
Again-
a lot of that is just moving the plot forward.
And it's also, again, highlighting Vincent as a criminal mastermind and somebody who's absolutely ruthless.
Right. There is a line in the movie, you don't steal from a master thief. I don't know. I don't remember how it's exactly put.
Yeah.
But it's also supposed to establish that, Nic Cage is clever, and you just have to assume that the Josh Lucas character, learned a lot from Cage. And
I
is just
actually
as
thought
clever.
the cab scene where he commandeers the cab at gunpoint, because he gets MC Gainey's gun when he's in the apartment, so now he's packing heat, and he commandeers this cab with the cabbie still in it, and the guy who was seemed to be super sharp technical guy with the cell phone and the computer in the FBI office looks down, sees it, what is obviously a GPS system on the dash of this cab, and does not know what it is. Asks the cabbie what it is, realizes that he can actually track the cab, and there's a pretty nice scene where the cabbie is talking to the dispatcher, who is absolutely pure Louisiana swamp folk or something. That and that's how they track down the cab, the red herring cab.
Who that day is? Who that day is?
Who day is?
Yeah, exactly.
Who day is?
Who day is? So my only thought is that the GPS class in prison was full, and he couldn't get in that class.
Right.
So he missed the actual. He knew about the phone GPS because it was part of the phone class, but kind of threw him off when it was in the cab. So we have Nic Cage, of course, in custody with the FBI. This is also the FBI kind of realizes that Cage wasn't just trying to throw him off the trail with the kidnapped daughter. That Vincent is alive, and he does have his daughter. So they do that by rolling deep into the cab company and talking to the overtly Cajun guy, and seeing the picture of Vincent, which in the picture he's all beat to hell too. So he's in a constant state of being beat up. This Vincent character.
I'm telling you, he's gotten so evil in the 8 years since he was shot, lost his leg, lost out on his $10 million, that he's turning into a golem.
Yeah.
And my reaction was the dark side corrupts.
Yes.
So Cage gets out of his handcuffs in the FBI car, and maybe probably a couple more neck chops.
But here's the thing. Again, by the numbers. In just about every action movie like this, especially some kind of kidnapping, something like that, during the rescue attempt, the hero has to injure himself or be injured in some way to kind of up the emotional stakes. And in this case, it was Nic Cage dislocating his thumbs in order to get out of the wrist or the handcuffs.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So again, it was just another situation of when I saw him pop his thumbs, I didn't think, ooh, or, oh, what is he doing? I thought, yeah, well,
fingers
that's
play a
gonna
big
happen.
part in this movie. Josh Lucas cuts his fingers off to fake his own death. The daughter, when attempting to get out of the trunk, pokes her fingers through the back of the taxi cab seat.
That's a really good point, Chris. I had not thought of that.
And then, of course, the thumb dislocation maneuver.
Right.
Well, I did a little research, and I found out that before the name Medallion came up, that the name of the movie was Fingers. And then they changed to Medallion, and then
they were afraid
Stolen.
they were afraid that the movie would be associated with Freddy Got Fingered.
Box office poison.
Actually, after Medallion, I believe it was changed to Taken, and then Liam Neeson, stole that thunder.
It follows that pretty closely, though.
Yeah, I think that's probably what they saw that, the writers were like, oh man, I like this Stolen movie, and they just saw Ocean's 11 too, and they're like, how can we combine these two movies to make a movie?
Well, they found a way.
But
he gets away from the FBI, and then he calls Riley, at which point they start speaking Swedish to each other.
Of course.
I mean, because there's no one in the FBI that knows Swedish. It is such an obscure language that only probably about 6 or 7 million, maybe upwards to 20 million people speak it, so it's not very common. I was thinking maybe Navajo would be a nice touch,
right.
But as Chris pointed out, that
been used in Wind Talkers.
That would be.
I mean, another Nic Cage.
Used in Wind Talkers.
Another Nic Cage movie.
He could have remembered some from that.
Well, there's also a scene in here, and I know we're kind of jumping through some of these scenes in the middle of the movie because it is a little bit kind of formulaic, but there is a scene, obviously, that's in every kind of hostage situation type movie where the daughter actually gets away for a moment. She a pretty smart move, I think. Takes the rear of the brake light out of the when she's in the trunk. She takes the brake light out, and eventually a policeman, again, because it's Mardi Gras and there's really nothing else to do, in Mardi Gras, but pull people over with brake lights or chase around guys who've already been to prison for the crime that you're investigating them for. This cop pulls over Josh Lucas's cab, and in that scene, Josh Lucas gets pretty sadistic. We see a little bit of the side of him where he was going to kill the man in the opening scene because he'd seen their faces. He basically kills this cop in cold blood, and somehow in the move, the trunk comes open and the daughter gets away. Now, as I believe, John, I believe you noticed, she doesn't run to where all these people are. She runs the opposite direction, and ends up coming to a dead end, and of course does not get away because it was too early in the movie for her to get away at this point. But the whole time, when Josh Lucas catches her and basically drugs her so he can put her back in the trunk, we look over and we see a boy has been watching them, and apparently seeing this woman being abducted, and does nothing but flip Vincent off. Do you guys remember the scene? And that was like one of the weirdest scenes in the movie. I mean, it was pretty.
Vincent responds. What are you looking at?
Yeah, what are you looking at? Small fry, or
which I like the shrimp reference because it made me kind of hungry for Cajun shrimp.
Yeah, well, they have a lot of that. Of course, it's a post oil spill world. I don't know if you want to. Maybe they're just trying to get the shrimp trade back up in the New Orleans area, in the Gulf area. But I thought that was a weird scene. But I mean,
yeah.
Well, the other thing about that scene was another what I thought was piece of beauty in the movie, where, as you mentioned, he gets pulled over, and it's like, and I wrote down in my notes as it was happening, I was like, he's getting pulled over during Mardi Gras, and then the cop comes to the car, and Josh Lucas actually says, I can't believe you're pulling me over during Mardi Gras. You don't have anything better to do? And I'm like, well, I'll scratch that note off the list because he, he brought it up himself. So, they're very aware of the, idiosyncrasies of the movie and the potential plot holes. and address them right up front.
Yeah, they just nail him shut.
Yeah. The one weird thing I thought was about that scene, if he was going to kill that police officer, why did he bother opening the trunk at all so she could get away?
That was a little unexplained.
Yeah.
I did like that scene too because he does drug her, and as he's putting her back in the trunk, it's just this weird hazy moment where he's just ranting, in full supervillain mode, and she's seeing crazy stuff, and that I thought that was kind of an interesting scene. So then, okay, so what he tells the girl in Swedish, and she is a Swedish actress, is why they're speaking Swedish. So what he tells her is, hey, let's meet up in our normal spot, which is like maybe a boat dock or, where they catch a ferry. And they meet up, and it's finally time in the movie where Cage decides that he has to pull another heist to get the money to get his daughter back.
Well, Josh Lucas finally... there's an exchange where he talks to Josh Lucas on the phone. That's actually when he dislocates his thumbs and gets away. He gets the phone just in time to answer it before Josh Lucas would supposedly kill his daughter. And Josh Lucas finally realizes that, yeah, he probably did burn that money because why? His reaction seems, too sincere, I guess, when he threatens to kill the daughter. And Cage's reaction is, don't worry, I'll get it for you. So he has to get the gang back together, or who's left of it, which is just Riley.
Just one person.
And pull off a heist. Now, at this moment, I'm thinking to myself, what kind of heist is he going to pull off? I mean, this is a very methodical, bank robber. He's not going to throw something together in a matter of an hour for $10 million. And again, another moment of doubt, slammed shut, because as Riley tells him, asks him later, didn't you have anything else to do besides plan these heists while you were in jail? He said, yeah, I was bored.
Right.
So he apparently had planned this thing while he was in jail and just had this, kind of as his plan B, I guess, for this whole time.
I knew what he was going to do, though, because at the very beginning of the movie, when they're inside the vault, Vincent is leaning up against the cage looking at all the gold. And, Nic Cage has to shake him out of it. And he's like, I like pretty things. And it was like, okay, they're showing us this gold for quite a bit for something that just be incidental. That is going to figure later on in the movie. And so he said, I'm going to get the money. And I was thinking, okay, gold.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Josh Lucas wanted that gold in the beginning. It was foreshadowing of what was going to happen later. I'm beginning to think about it. That bank for 8 years held what looks to be, I mean, if the math is right, by the number of bars that there looked to be in there, that was probably like $1 billion worth of gold.
Yes.
And, I would imagine the stock market crash during all this. They probably would have unloaded that. The price of gold went through the roof.
Right.
But it just remains in the exact same spot for 8 years, and
it was a museum
piece. I don't know if that's a normal thing. I used to work for a bank. We had no gold at all.
Right.
I don't think that's a normal thing.
That was a pretty
especially when we're
bank,
not on the gold exchange anymore.
And that was a pretty exceptional bank.
It wasn't exceptional. It was actually, as John pointed out, I think it was Gringotts from Harry Potter.
Right. There were no gnomes there. I was kind of, or goblins there. I was kind of
not
disappointed.
that we know of. I mean,
right. They did show it after hours.
Yeah. It kind of transforms at night. I don't know. Maybe at a certain the witching hour, possibly. So, as Nic Cage has worked out, as Chris mentioned in prison, how to get to this gold, and it's through a sewer network.
Right.
And he gets a what was it he got to break in there, John?
Thermal lance.
Thermal lance.
Which is a thing. It's not. They didn't pull that out or anything like that. That is an actual thing.
That is an actual thing. So he somehow, I don't know, had the blueprints or the sewer information while he was in prison, or they gave another class on the city infrastructure.
Or to wrap it up, maybe he remembered the layout because he cased the bank out so thoroughly the 8 years previous.
Yeah. So it was like 30 steps, 60 steps, turn left, right. And he knew
Right.
exactly how to get under the gold.
Yeah, no, exactly.
So he takes this thermal lance and pokes it up into the ceiling and breaks through, which I guess that, banks don't think about maybe making the floor, metal
More secure.
too. We'll just make it concrete and maybe some thin metal. But because he gets through there fairly quick. I'd say in about 5 minutes he's through.
Yeah.
Melts
To
the
be
gold
fair,
above.
To be fair,
Yeah.
to the world, a thermal lance does get up to around, I think, 2,500 to 3,000 degrees.
Which I don't know what the melting point of stainless steel is. I didn't look that up. I did look up the melting point of gold, which is
Right.
about 2,000 degrees. So the melting of the gold, no problem. I just don't know about going through a bank vault from below. So they go from below,
Exactly.
they melt the gold, and they let this molten 2,000 degree gold just fall through this hole. They don't really have a whole lot of safety equipment. Falls into the water, and of course it cools down into chunks, and Riley
And-
puts it in the bag.
They're not wearing respirators. So
There's tons of problems with this scene.
Right, so,
They're
I mean,
dealing with
there's
molten
fumes.
metal and no respirators. There's no steam coming from
he's
the,
not even wearing.
the
I don't
water.
think he might have been wearing gloves.
Well, yeah, Riley is collecting the gold as it cools in the water. There's water on the ground below the hole that they're dripping the molten gold out of, and she does collect it, and she is wearing gloves. Now, whether I cannot
Okay.
recall that Nic Cage was wearing them, but
He was
she
wearing
definitely-
gloves and goggles too.
Oh, okay.
Right. His
But-
mouth was wide open.
Yeah. Well, this is something that bothers me. If they're we've said the performances in this movie were okay, but one thing I thought was kind of funny. All the dealings with this gold, with this molten and then hardened gold. Obviously, the gold weighs a decent amount of money. They mention weighs a decent amount of weight, not money. Also money. But they say it early in the film that the gold bars are 26 pounds a piece, I believe. So we know that there's a lot of weight, probably more than they could realistically move. But regardless, when they do move it, it seems like the actors try really, really hard to make whatever prop they're holding that's supposed to be the gold seem really heavy. But you can tell when they pick it up and move it that it's really not heavy, but they're trying to make it look like it's heavy. And I didn't think that worked very well because I was laughing at that.
Yeah, well, it certainly wasn't $10 million worth of gold because that weighs about 500 pounds.
Yeah, it looked like the bag of gold they were probably trying to move was probably more like
80 pounds.
75 to 100 pounds.
Right.
Right.
But even then, I don't think the bag they actually had on set when they were filming that weighed anything at all because the actors, both Malin Akerman and Nic Cage, when they're handling it, it looks like they're trying to make it look like it's heavy. Nic Cage keeps huffing and puffing and sighing and catching his breath. And it just, that part to me, I found it kind of funny. I didn't think it worked very well.
Yeah.
Well,
No, they didn't sell it very well.
No, and the thing was, at the end of the movie, it really the heist didn't matter at all, except for to kind of set up the ending. I mean, he
Right.
could have had lead in that bag. When it came to his
Right.
confrontation with Vincent, it could have been anything in there. And
Yeah.
as a matter of fact, I don't even know why he did it in the first place. He should have got a bag of rocks, taken a gun there, and just shot him on sight and been like,
Right.
You have my daughter? Yeah, she's in the trunk. Boom, you're dead,
Right. I mean, because Vincent certainly didn't, tag along behind him to make sure he did the heist or anything like that. There was no way for him to check. So really, in the end, it was just, his word. And yeah, at any point, he could have just said, "Yeah, sure, I got the money. Where do we meet?"
Yeah, we should note there was one more fake out here on the FBI. The FBI was, of course, the bank alarm went off because I guess vaults have fire alarms because, spontaneous combustion in vaults, I guess, happens a lot.
Right.
And so they were alerted that they knew that he was going to make a heist. Danny Houston, comes up at least with that much to kind of figure out, oh, okay, his only other avenue is to rob a bank at this point.
Right.
So he goes to they get on the trail, they get the alarm, They go to the bank. At this point, they get away in it's a red pickup truck. The FBI, they go to a ferry, and of course we have another one of those moments where Danny Houston's like, nope, not now, not yet. Let's wait till they're across.
Right.
They get across, they drive away, and the FBI pull them over, and it's a dummy with a cigarette in its mouth. So
for no reason, because at no point has Nic Cage smoked at all in this show.
So, all right. So the FBI are fooled, and they're going through. They know the GPS has been swapped out at this point by Vincent, but they know that they figure he probably didn't do it while he was casing places. So they look up his records and where's he been the past couple weeks, and they find a common spot, and Danny Houston spots a map to an amusement park that's been shut down, and he's like, well, Josh Lucas is now a supervillain, so this is the obvious place for him.
Duh.
So we know we're going to come up where there's going to be this confrontation, and Nic Cage is finally ready to have the one-on-one with the big bad here, and pulls up, brings out the gold, and he's ready to do the exchange. But being that Josh Lucas is not just a villain and a supervillain, he's got to go over the top, and he decides that he's going to kick over a can of gasoline that's going to spread that. Well, I guess it was already spread all over the car the way it started burning, but he must put gas all over the car and poured gas on the ground and pulls out a flare. And he's going to basically burn the girl alive in the trunk. He wants to give full payback for the time in jail, or he didn't actually spend any time in jail. That's the thing. The Nic Cage character, he didn't turn any of the rest of them in, and he served the time by himself. But the fact that Josh Lucas lost his leg, I guess he wanted to pay him back
because he
for
wouldn't
that.
go to the doctor.
I'm not so sure that a leg and a daughter's an equal kind of exchange.
Right.
Maybe,
especially since he got away scot-free, which means he could have gone to a doctor at any point.
Right. Yeah. It was kind of his problem.
And I really don't think that a gunshot wound to the leg at any hospital in the New Orleans area would be a very big deal.
Right.
No.
It just seems to me like that would be a pretty common thing. They probably get 10, 12 a night in ER. There, I accidentally shot myself in the leg. Can you help me out? Kind of call.
Or I was walking down the street and a bullet hit me. I don't know who shot me. Okay, here you go, patched up. Get out of here.
Yeah.
Well, it's Obamacare. Thanks, Obama. So he's gonna set the thing on fire. Nic Cage rushes him where Vincent has a gun and shoots Nic Cage in the gut, and a battle begins. And there's Nic Cage gets fire on his arm, and eventually the Josh Lucas supervillain character catches on fire.
Nic Cage gets a bad injury. I think he gets stabbed at one point in the fight.
Shot.
I think he's just sticking it. I think he's just sticking his finger in the wound or something.
Is there he gets shot, and then Vincent starts sticking his finger in the wound to really hurt him.
More fingers.
More
fingers are a running theme. So.
Yeah.
But anyway, Josh Lucas ends up on fire. The cab's on fire. So Nic Cage decides that the best course of action with his daughter still stuck in the trunk is to drive the car into a small pond.
Yeah.
So she can.
Although he has the keys.
Yeah. So she can drown. Yeah. Why Josh Lucas shouldn't have kept the keys in the.
Right.
Well, anyway.
Bad planning.
I guess it's decided that it's better to drown her than to let her burn alive at this point.
Right.
But he does drive in there. Does take care of that, and the car is sinking. And then we have a Terminator moment with Josh Lucas. He's not dead. You just see you see his leg, and then you see the artificial leg, which is one of those runner legs.
Yeah.
That you see like professional runners wear. So you see that, and you're thinking, Terminator, because there's still some flames in the background. Cage does have the keys. He's trying to get open the trunk, struggling with that, just trying to muscle it open. and the Lucas character does attack him from behind, and another small battle ensues.
And guess who wins?
Well, yeah, I mean, and the thing, the thing is, the fire. Josh Lucas' character has his shirt off, half his hair is burned off, so he's even more supervillain-like.
Well, again, it's a Terminator moment where it's like in the first movie where, all of his skin's burned off, and now he's the exoskeleton, and he's coming after you.
So it eventually boils down to Nic Cage grabbing like a pipe or something. And Chris, I know this is always one of your favorite parts of the movie, so I'll let you take this part.
Yeah, well, it all comes down to, how does the villain die in the end? And so often disappointed in movies. But in this movie, he's already been burned. He is now impaled to be set up to be drowned. I mean, really, you get three of the best ways to kill somebody taken care of in this movie. Because really, Nic Cage hasn't done a lot of violence. He's had some moments, but in the course of an action movie, he has not really been particularly sadistic at any point. But
he hadn't killed anybody at that point.
No, he'd beaten up some FBI guys and
throat punch.
Yeah, and MC Gainey, that was a pretty violent fight.
But the FBI killed him.
But the FBI killed Gainey. But at this point, he's trying to save his daughter, so all that passion's there, and he really has no problems killing Vincent at this point. Again, burned, impaled, and drowned as he slams the car trunk.
See, I was going to say that there's the justice of it is, where does he drown? He drowns inside the trunk.
In the trunk. In the trunk. And I think that was a pretty fitting end to old Vincent.
Yeah. An impaling is always the best way for a villain to go in my mind.
Yeah, and just like a Golem, he was hard to kill.
Right.
It took a few different methods to actually put him down.
Yeah.
Right.
So at this point, basically he gets his daughter out of the, before that happened, he gets his daughter out of the trunk, but he's still shot in the gut. They go to shore. Now you see the FBI helicopter coming in. It's Danny Houston and his partner coming in, and they land the helicopter. They see he's shot. They're not going to let this guy die. He's, again, Danny Houston's come to like this guy, I believe. So they get him in the helicopter. He's going to live. But the daughter asked, "Is my daddy going to prison again?" And Danny Houston's like, "I think that other guy was behind all this."
Well, plus they did foreshadowing on this gut shot thing. Is back in the fight with MC Gainey, when he first surprises MC Gainey at his apartment, he pulls a gun on him, right? And he's demanding answers, and he holds the gun up against his head, and he's not getting any answers. And he says, "Well, let me point at something you really care about." And he points at his stomach with the gun, and he says something to the degree that, if you get shot in the stomach, it takes hours for you to die.
Right.
And so, cut to the end, he gets shot in the stomach. And so they'd kind of it was another case. They'd done a lot of foreshadowing in this movie. That's another foreshadowing where he gets shot in the stomach.
Is good. That's good movie making, really.
Everything that's said, everything that's shown, all comes back, and throughout the entire movie.
Yeah.
So, cut to a scene with another truck going through a graveyard. It's classic New Orleans graveyard at this point. And your thought immediately is, Nic Cage died. And it's a pretty quick fake out, but I actually did maybe think that at first it was his daughter going to visit the grave or something like that. But quickly cuts to kind of a shoreside mobile home set up for the Nic Cage character, and they're having a little cookout. And the FBI are still watching off the shore in a boat. Danny Houston's wearing another crazy hat. It's more like a fisherman's hat, but since he's on the water. hats are his
Right.
thing. So that's his new trademark. So he's always has to have a hat on.
Yeah, he's like the Ashton Kutcher of the New Orleans FBI office.
Yeah. And so they're watching him from the shore. I guess see if he's still up to any monkey business, especially with the money. I don't, at this point, I really don't know why they're watching him anymore.
Right.
But we do have closure as Nic Cage finds a nice about $300,000 nugget of gold in the back of the truck that was used during the robbery. Completely overlooked for however long it took him to recover from a gunshot wound,
Right.
which I would imagine is some decent amount of time. And so the Danny Houston character sees this, and there's him and the Swedish supermodel are talking, and they're trying to figure out whether to dump this gold or not, and the FBI agent is rooting him on to throw it in the water. So Nic Cage does these fake outs with the gold, goes back to the table, and then you see him get up and throw something in the water, and the FBI is like, finally, the guy Danny Houston's like, I can go back to my life again. So this was the closure they needed. So they knew that there was some gold unaccounted for. I guess that's why they were watching him.
That's
I
the
guess
thing,
they
though.
I guess they weighed every I don't know how they knew there was things missing. I guess they had some weight. I mean, 300,000 is pretty significant. So
Well, it was another situation of where the FBI had the attitude of where we can arrest him, but only under a very specific set of circumstances.
yeah,
So
he has to keep that gold.
Yeah,
He
they
can't-
knew that. Yeah, they knew that he had the gold because they were looking at him through the binoculars. They saw him with a big chunk of gold,
Yeah,
and so the situation was, if he throws it over, then we won't arrest him ever
yeah.
again.
We don't have anything on him.
Exactly.
Nothing.
But if he tries to sell the gold to somebody, then we're going to arrest him. Instead of thinking, you know what, he's got a huge chunk of gold in his hand right now. Why don't we just swoop in and get him with the gold?
I mean, these guys act like they have this they want justice. However, again, if you go back to the helicopter scene, Danny Houston's like, screw it, it's the other guy. There's no sense of justice there.
Right.
So Nic Cage throws something in the water. Of course, they cut to basically being a pine cone that was on the table. We won't worry about the physics of that.
Super heavy pine cone that doesn't float.
And then Nic Cage and the girl walk away, and then it pans back to the table with the piece of gold sitting there. So he did get away with $300,000 worth of gold.
Right. The end.
Which I don't, what I don't know what the moral of that is.
No.
Well, I mean,
But it does
I
tie
think the
things
moral
up in a
is-
nice
no,
notch, and a nice bow. What was that?
I said I think the moral is that Nic Cage, though a hero, though a good guy in many ways, is still really just a thief at heart.
Yeah.
He's still, we saw it when the movie began. He was a thief, and when the movie ended, he was a thief. I don't think there's a real journey there as a character in character development.
I think the lesson is murder pays. Because he went through most of his career murder-free, and in the movie, none of his heists paid off until after he killed Vincent, and then he ended up around $300,000 richer.
Which right? I mean, the FBI basically knows he murdered a guy.
Right.
So
exactly.
he got away with
and he got
murder.
away with the murder.
Yeah.
So murder pays.
Yeah. I think that I think the moral here is if you have a certain angle towards your crimes and only murder other criminals, then the FBI will look the other way.
It worked for the mob.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about robbing a bank and not killing anybody until Chris becomes a supervillain, and I have to murder
until
Chris.
you really mean it. No, I mean, again, this is a by the numbers movie. I had thought of while I was watching. I was kind of daydreaming of directions that I wish it would have taken. Like I wish that Nic Cage was lying about the money all along, and and the only part where he did tell the truth is that it is with his lawyer in Tuscaloosa, and that this whole thing about trying to save his daughter was he did want to save his daughter, but there's $10 million that he has all to himself.
Oh, that horn means it's about time to wrap things up. Pretty far deep in here, so let's get some final thoughts. John, you said at the beginning that you would not recommend this movie. Does that still stand?
I think I mean, I wouldn't recommend against the movie. I wouldn't say, oh my God, if somebody's going to make you watch it, then run away and defriend them or anything like that. I would just say, if you seek it out as background noise. If you're cleaning or something like that, or if you're doing homework, this movie will in no way surprise or disturb you.
Chris, what are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts overall are that it's a very, it's inoffensive. I agree with John in that, it's not a great movie, but it's definitely something you can watch. One thing I will add is I'd like to give a shout out to the music, which I enjoyed.
Oh, yeah.
It had a very, to me, I kept thinking of old like 60s action series like The Saint or The Man from U.N.C.L.E. It kind of had a action TV feel to it. And, I think some people might see it as a little cheesy, maybe a little on the nose, but I thought it worked well for this movie.
Yeah.
And so I think it kind of, just kind of elevated it a little bit and made it a very watchable movie. The only disappointing thing is, to me, and I think it may be a disappointment to many viewers of this movie, so we need to warn everybody, there is no Crazy Cage in this.
Yeah.
Just one
There's one little weird look in his eye when he's dripping the molten gold from the ceiling, where Malin Akerman's like, "We got to go, man. We're gonna get caught." And he says, "I just got to see how much gold I can get." And he had a little craze in his eye, but I think for the most part, I think Simon West kept him on a pretty short leash.
I mean, but who doesn't get gold fever? Really?
Yeah.
I mean, we probably all would have done that in that situation.
Right.
My thought is that, I said at the beginning, I think this is a great Netflix rental. If you're out of things to watch, but before you watch this, make sure you watch House of Cards. Make sure you watch Orange is the New Black. I would say even watch the other one, the Lilyhammer. All their originals. Make sure you watch those on Netflix first. There's plenty of movies to watch, but if you're a Nic Cage fan, there's no reason to skip this movie. Go ahead, put it on play. You won't have to pay very much attention. You could probably watch, maybe the first half an hour and the last half an hour and guess everything that happens in between.
Exactly.
I mean, hey, it's only an hour and a half long. I mean,
right.
If you just sat through this podcast, you could have watched it and taken 3 bathroom breaks during the movie. So.
Right during it. So we're going to wrap things up here. This has been our review of Nicolas Cage's Stolen. Please visit our website at DTMMBmedia.com. We also have a SoundCloud page this is going to be posted to. Check that out. And we'd ask that if you do listen to this, leave us some comments. You can do it on the blog, or you can do it on the SoundCloud page, or even YouTube, which this will probably make it too. Anywhere you find us, just let us know what you think, and we'll get back to you if you have any questions. This has been Vince DeGeorge.
I'm Chris
John
Herndon.
Dandriel. Whoops.
Let's do that one at a time, guys. Chris, you go first.
I'm Chris Herndon.
I'm John Dandriel.
Thank you for listening, guys, and we'll see you next time.
This has been a Don't Tell Me My Business Media production.